Thank you. We will now reconvene the regular council meeting portion. We are rising from closed session with a report. The report being that council appoint Griffin Brown to the Milford Valley Trails Advisory Committee for the 22-26 term of council. We have a mover for that. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. We will now move on to the delegation portion of our meeting. Mr. Taylor, if you'd like to come to the stand, I can give you the pretty basic rundown. So when the red light determines who's being recorded. So if you push that button on after I push mine off, you'll be good to go. You have 10 minutes to do your formal presentation, and then we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A afterwards. Okay, that's the rundown. Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Graham, council members, and anyone else listening today. I appreciate you lending me your ears for a few minutes. I know your time is valuable, and I know my time is valuable. And I trust you understand that I wouldn't have taken the time to present today as well as prepare the short presentation if I didn't really think that some action was needed on this topic. The first day of school this year was about 2 weeks ago as of tomorrow. On that day, my father-in-law was helping out by walking our kids home from school. On this walk, he was nearly hit by 2 pickup trucks who ran through the activated pedestrian crosswalk located at Sherbrooke Street West and Longview Drive. Something which you'll hear is a common occurrence. You can go ahead and call up the first slide as well. Thank you. This was so jarring to him that he called me to tell me about it, which prompted me to call Global News, who in turn did a story about this crosswalk just 2 days later on September 7th. As a next step, I'm here today to speak with you about this crosswalk, which I consider to be a significant and a sincere matter of public safety, with emphasis on the children attending both James Strath Public and Crestwood Secondary Schools. I should mention that I'm a father of 3, ages 12, 10, and 8. All of our children attend James Strath and will eventually attend Crestwood as we live across the road on Campbell Avenue. To get home from school each day, many kids use this crosswalk located right in front of Crestwood to get across the busy road of Sherbrooke. The problem, as you just heard, is that this crosswalk has proven to be very ineffective and downright dangerous. If I could summarize the problem statement in one sentence, it would be this: I believe that it's actually less safe with this current crosswalk than without any crosswalk at all. It's giving people a false sense of security, thinking that the cars are going to stop, and they don't. Having used and dealt with this crosswalk since it was installed, I'd like to show you my thoughts on this matter. Next slide, please. As slide 2 indicates, the crosswalk was installed by Cavan Township in the summer of 2019. Their hearts were in the right place, trying to keep people safe. However, after it was installed, my family immediately noticed that the cars weren't stopping. We'd push the button, we'd watch the cars whiz by as they ignored the yellow lights. I'm saying ignore, but as I'll explain, there's a little more to it than that. The worst time of day, by leaps and bounds, is the end of the school day, when both schools are let out, James Strath and Crestwood. And I'll show you this in more detail. This slide contains some other bullet points on the history and my efforts over the last 3 years in trying to convince the township that this crosswalk is just not working. The takeaway message is that this has been an ongoing issue. As further evidence, I'd like to mention that this past Friday, September 15th, there was a vehicle collision at this location. It was so recent that I didn't even have time to get it into my slide deck, but you're free to ask around and you'll find it to be true. 3 days ago, there was a collision at this location just a few feet from this crosswalk. Luckily, it wasn't that serious and it didn't involve pedestrians, but the crosswalk is a problem. Moving to the next slide, the 4 problem areas that I'd like to address are as follows. 1, the location of the crosswalk. 2, the style of the crosswalk. 3, the parking on Longview Drive. And 4, the overall traffic flow. I'll go through each of these in just 1 or 2 slides and I'll provide my recommendations at the end. Next slide. The first issue to cover off would be the location of the crosswalk. Here you'll see an overhead map and you'll see a blue X where the crosswalk is located in relation to Sherbrooke Street and Crestwood Secondary School. At first glance, the location of the crosswalk makes sense. It's offering a direct path for students and parents to cross over Sherbrooke and enter into the subdivision where I live. I'd like to clarify that both Strath and Crestwood are let out at the same time of day because they share busing. So we're talking about a lot of kids here between the 2 schools. What you'll more importantly also see on this slide are the numbers 1 through 5 shown in red. These are all the sources of traffic flow that come into play at the end of each school day. Number 1 is the cars parked on Longview Drive, waiting to pick their kids up and then heading back out onto Sherbrooke. Numbers 2 and 3 are the exits from Crestwood. And I want to be clear, both of these exits are being used as entrances and exits. So for either 2 or 3, you'll get cars turning left and right back out onto Sherbrooke Street. Number 4 is the school buses, which are let out about 5 minutes after school ends, which coincides with kids walking home. All of the buses turn out of this number 4 driveway and they turn left to right onto Sherbrooke. It's about 50-50. And lastly, number 5 is just the everyday traffic on Sherbrooke Street, which is busy at the best of times and about 100 times busier at the end of the day when you've got parents trying to pick up their kids. My point with this slide is to suggest that the crosswalk is essentially located in the eye of a storm here, with cars coming from all directions, and that perhaps a relook at this location should be considered. Next slide. The second problem that I mentioned is the style of crosswalk. What I mean is that this crosswalk does not have an actual traffic light with a red, yellow, and a green. I've seen many crosswalks that do have this style of light. And if you want an example, you can just look about a kilometer to the south, right in front of the Wellness Center on Brayley Drive. Here you'll find a pedestrian activated traffic light with the full red, yellow, green setup, which seems to work quite well. However, at our crosswalk, it's yellow flashing lights. The problem is the lack of visibility. The photo that you're seeing on the screen is from Google, and it's not been altered in any way. It's taken on a typical bright sunny day, and if you can imagine those yellow lights flashing at the sides of the crosswalk, you can hardly see them. Add to this the fact that Sherbrooke faces east-west, so in the morning and evening when the sun is low on the horizon, it quite literally blinds drivers. My suggestion would be that if this were a full traffic light setup, drivers would be able to see and recognize the lights much more easily, as they're designed with the sun in mind. The lights are brighter, they're located more out over the road, and they're shaded by the sun in the design of the fixture. During that global news segment that I mentioned, several Crestwood students were interviewed. Their number one observation, besides stating that the cars don't stop and they've almost been hit, was that they don't think the cars can see the lights. And that's my point here as well with this slide. Next slide. The third problem is perhaps a smaller issue, but it's worth spending a quick minute on. I'm referring to the parking on Longview Drive. I snapped this photo just on the day I was told I'd have the opportunity to present to you, which was September 11th, just a regular day. I included a small inset photo on the bottom so you could see where I'm talking about if you're not familiar with Longview Drive. But essentially, it's where the crosswalk leads to. Parents park here at the end of the day in both directions, as you can see, to meet their children. This creates two issues. The first issue is they're blocking both sides of the road so that any kids walking home have nowhere to walk except in the middle of the road. The second is that it creates even more traffic trying to get back out onto Sherbrooke Street. Something else that's a little ironic is that you'll see a white SUV parked on the right side of the road in this photo. A few minutes after I took this photo, I witnessed that vehicle turn left onto Sherbrooke while the crosswalk was activated, and the vehicle proceeded right through without stopping. Traffic is so bad that people take chances and they disobey laws so that they don't have to wait for a better opening. If we could eliminate parents parking on Longview, we'd eliminate one of those 5 sources of traffic that I talked about. Next slide. We're moving on to the fourth problem area here, which is overall traffic flow. The most significant of all the traffic flow issues, in my opinion, is shown on this slide. You've got one of those exits from Crestwood dumping right out onto Sherbrooke. People are effectively exiting right into the crosswalk. I'd have to say that most of the cars that run through the crosswalk illegally are cars exiting from this location. Many kids and parents aren't paying attention, or maybe they're more interested in showing their friends how fast their cars are and revving their engines, and they don't notice that the lights are activated or that people are crossing. I've had this personally happen where I was halfway across the road only to have a student zip out of Crestwood and blow right by me. His car was close enough that I could have kicked it, and I did. Next slide. Same day, same problem being shown here. You can see some of the various directions of traffic that converge at the crosswalk or within just a few feet of it. You've got both cars entering and exiting Crestwood. You've got cars exiting Longview, and you've got the Sherbrooke traffic heavy in both directions. The buses hadn't been let out yet, or you'd see them too. Now imagine some kids trying to cross right between those two stopped cars and just hoping that no one speeds out of Crestwood right in front of them. That's reality. And by the way, there's that white SUV that I mentioned, the one who makes a left through the crosswalk when it's activated. Next slide. This is the final slide on traffic flow. What I'm trying to show here is the combination and density of all of the traffic flows from the 5 areas we saw on the earlier slide. There's a legend showing you what each of the colored arrows represents and a red X showing you where the crosswalk is located, right in the middle of it all. By now, I think you get what I'm trying to say. There are too many cars coming from too many directions. They're all fighting against each other and they're rushing. My recommendations are on this slide, but they're a little bit small, so I'm going to put them on the next slide in a larger font, and you'll be happy to know that the next slide is my last one. Here, I'm trying to list all the problem areas as well as my recommendations for each one. The tricky part is I do understand that Cavan Township may not be able to help with all of these areas, and some of them might be more the responsibility of the Kawartha Pine Ridge School Board. but I've listed them here so that we can see a complete package. And yes, I am talking to the school board as well. First off is the location. I'll admit it's probably the hardest thing to change, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least suggest that the township may want to rethink the location of this crosswalk. Second, in regards to the style of crosswalk, I'm strongly recommending that this crosswalk be converted to a full traffic light setup with red, yellow, green, just like the crossing I mentioned in front of the Wellness Center on Brayley. While it's true that Brayley has 4 lanes and Sherbrooke only has 2, I can guarantee you that between the hours of 2:30 and 3:30 every day, this location is busier. Again, I think this would be an action for the township to consider. Third, I have 2 recommendations to address traffic flow. The first is for Cavan to prohibit parking on Longview Drive and to deter parents from waiting there for kids and then turning directly back onto Sherbrooke Street. I assume this would be a township action. The second recommendation is to reconfigure the exits on Crestwood. Why not have the west exit for left turns only away from the crosswalk? Why not have the east exit for right turns only away from the crosswalk? I think this is low-hanging fruit. It could be a KPR action. My last recommendation is really something that should have been done a long time ago, and that's for a crossing guard to be installed at the end of each school day. Again, I assume this could be a KPR action, but any support on this recommendation would be very much appreciated. I've done a lot of talking. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope the pictures and the text help to demonstrate my point and convince you that I'm not just trying to be difficult. I'll close by saying that I truly believe without any action, there will soon be a pedestrian incident at this crosswalk. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I'd like to thank the council proactively for helping me to keep my kids, your kids, our kids a little safer when walking home each day. This concludes my presentation. I'll try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, for that informative, and the visuals were excellent. So thank you for providing that. I think it's a great delegation to provide your insights and sort of speak to obviously this issue. I know a number of us attended Crestwood Secondary School and are well aware of the precarious nature of its proximity. The one nuance that I just wanted to reiterate is that, you know, this is also a county road. So it is a double layer of bureaucracy that is involved in the decision-making, the investment there. But I'm going to go to our Director of Public Works, Mr. Hancock, for his comments on a bit of the history and the discussions that have led to the crosswalk today and where we're at. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. First of all, we understand the situation with the traffic volumes in the area and the peak traffic predictor at the time when schools are let out and when they're actually opening and closing. We have been in contact with city police. John Lyons has reported back to us. They have been doing some enforcement in the area, I think, to check on speeding and also to check on those running the present crosswalk light. We've not heard from the school board on this issue to date, but we will be following up directly with them. And we have spoken to the county just briefly, verbally to some of the managers there. So my suggestion to council would be to refer it to staff and that we look at a joint meeting that would involve the school board, the police and the county, look at the comments made by Mr. Taylor, look at the recommendations and see if there's something that we could do, such as putting in place a crossing guard, which is under our jurisdiction. There is also the opportunity of controlled entrances. That's something that would be with the county and the school board, such as a right in, right out. There are other situations such as a no parking that we can look at, but clearly, I mean, there is a peak load of traffic at this time, and I think we recognize that Brayley and Sherbrooke, there is a lot of traffic at that intersection. So we did try this. Looks like during the first period it might have worked, and then we had COVID, so there wasn't really a lot of action in the area. Now we're back to almost full attendance at school, so I think it's worth us taking the time to call a meeting with the different parties.
Thank you. And just to clarify, a comment you made, just to save Mr. Taylor some time, I believe that the installation of a crossing guard is within our jurisdiction, not PPR. So just so you don't go after them for something they're not involved in. It's just about a $13,000 per year, I think, cost incurred for the municipality, but we do it at other educational facilities where it's necessary. So it's definitely something we can consider in looking at. It's just a matter of obviously finding those volunteers to do that work as well as an issue of late. So Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. I don't even think the crossing guard is as necessary at the start of the school day. It's just at the end of the school day. So perhaps the cost could be mitigated. And I would just like to clarify for Mr. Hancock that although I am focusing on the end of the school day, it's really any time of day. My wife and I were out for a walk last night and hit the button and someone ran right through it, right? So it's clearly a bigger issue. And I understand the enforcement angle, but I think it's into the design of that crosswalk at that location. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Members of council, questions? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Taylor, again, thank you very much for bringing this up. I've experienced that intersection numerous times, and it is definitely needs some work. I do have 2 children that go to those schools, and by the way, there are 3 schools there. You're missing Crestwood Intermediate, which now has extra child load. So it should come to our attention, and we should address this very quickly. You're right, that crosswalk is very difficult to see. I know I've caught myself on occasion going, "Oop, is it on or off?" So I think it needs to be changed. As far as a cross guard goes, I think we should probably look at installing one sooner rather than later. Maybe we reach out to the city of Peterborough, which already has a much larger stable of crossing guards that we could potentially make use of, especially if we're only looking at the end of day. But yeah, I think changing that crossing light is imperative. I think we need to do that right away. Obviously it'll have to work its way through some group meeting, but whether it's, redesigning that whole area or just, as you said, instigating a stopping cross light versus just a warning one would go a long way. But yeah, no, there's a lot of work to be done there. And thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention.
Other questions, member of council? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, you were speaking about location change. It's like building a sidewalk. Human nature is to take the shortest path. So I don't see a real option there as far as making people not park on the side of the intersection that you live on. They're going to look at it as convenience point of view. I really wonder when you're talking, and I see the idea of making a left turn and a right turn out of the parking lot. All that does is mean cars are moving more inside the parking lot and kids are running between vehicles to get to their car. It's just going to change the dynamics. It's not going to fix the problem, I don't think, at a glance, but further studies will prove that one way or the other. That's my personal take on it. I think we're disadvantaging the children. I watch it all the time on the school buses out here. We're not teaching the kids at a young age that they're responsible for their own safety. We're coddling them all the time with little arms that come out on the bus and flashing lights, all good stuff, not a problem. But we're not emphasizing to the individual child back to the fact that it's you that have to become a good adult. You have to take some responsibility. They jump off the school bus, they take off, they come out to the front of Crestwood to smoke, and they cut across because they're late getting back to class because they stayed talking too long during the day. I get it. There's a high volume of traffic. I would think that because most of the crosswalk apparatus is already there, my guess would be to upgrade it to something like you're talking about would be a fairly simple thing. The painting's not going to change. The signage may change a little bit, but not much. I think that's a better option. I just don't know if the other few options are as viable.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Byrne. I think a big issue with relocating the sidewalk is the lack of a sidewalk. I mean, I would hate to move it somewhere where we're just prolonging the amount of time that kids are going to be on that busy road, as you mentioned, without the safety of a ditch or a sidewalk and that gap between them. But I think there's a consensus from the conversation that there's improvements that need to be made. And I think, as Mr. Hancock said, I think that there is a lot of things that can be done on the school board property side. I think there's been issues with the parking lot capacity there since I was there, and that was more time ago than I care to admit. But it definitely needs all three parties involved with the county and the school board. So with that being said, like the direction that we have before us is that direct staff to work with representatives from the county of Peterborough and the school board to investigate options and report back to council as to how to proceed forward. So that is the motion before us. If there's any other questions before, if not, I'll look for a motion to move that if everyone's okay. Got a question, Deputy Mayor Huntley?
The only thing I would add to that through you, Chair, is, I think this is something that is a high priority and should have a time frame on it. Shouldn't just, we should, be looking for how fast we can get this back.
I understand that comment. I think the intention is to do it as quickly as possible, but I know with regards to getting an audience with certain members that are in play, it can take some time. We're not able to enforce a response or solicit a response in a given timeline with the various parties involved. I don't think there'll be much issues with some. Ms. Hurley, would you like to comment?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my only comment is it is a priority. We understand that. We're hearing that, and staff will make it every effort to make it a priority to have these meetings as soon as possible so that we could draft a report and come back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Okay, with that, any other comments or questions, Deputy Mayor Huntley? So we're going to receive the report with the delegation for information, and we're going to direct staff to work with the representatives from the county of Peterborough and the school board to investigate options and report back to council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Question, Mr. Taylor?
No, just a final comment. Thank you very much. And if I can be personally of any help with any of the meetings you're talking about, if you'd like me to do the same presentation again, please contact me. I'm obviously in full support. So thanks again.
Thank you for that offer, sir. With that, we are now going to move on with our regular portion of the meeting. The public meeting will begin now. That public meeting be opened in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990. And again, a mover to open that portion of the public meeting, Councillor Natchoff and Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. We will now begin with the report for the public meeting. I believe as Ms. Ellis is going to be leading us through that. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public, staff. The purpose of today's public meeting is to provide information about a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for a piece of property located in part of Lot 13, Concession 14, Cavan. The second purpose of the meeting is to hear public comment, either in favor of or against the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The zoning bylaw amendment that is before council today is a direct result of a severance application, or actually 3 severance applications to create 3 new lots. Carly, if I could get you to scroll to the key map, that would be appreciated. As I've said, the property in question is located in part of Lot 13, Concession 14 in Mount Pleasant. The property that you see highlighted in blue is the whole property subject to the application. Then you can see in a darker blue, there are 3 lots that are outlined. Those are the 3 severed lots that have been conditionally approved by Peterborough County Land Division. If you could scroll to the next map, please. So this is actually, this map here is the map showing the location of the 3 severance applications. So the lot furthest to the south, B93-21, that property is about 1 acre in size and has just about 175 feet of frontage on County Road 10. B94 and B95-21 are the same size. They're both approximately 1 acre in size, and they have about 200 feet of frontage on County Road 10. The lot identified by B93-23, is or 21, is a little oddly shaped because of an existing situation with a tile bed that is located on a portion of the farm property. So the lot had to be reconfigured to go out and around the location of that tile bed. That was the path of least resistance. So with the zoning bylaw amendment before council today, these 3 lots are proposed to be rezoned from the future development zone to the Hamlet residential zone. In the Hamlet residential zone, a single detached dwelling and a maximum of 3 accessory buildings are permitted. The minimum lot area and lot frontage requirements. So the minimum lot frontage requirement is just about 38 meters. And the minimum lot area requirement is 3,000 square meters. So these lots meet the standard requirements for the Hamlet residential zone. if you could then go to the Schedule 1 for the bylaw, which is further down. The zoning bylaw amendment will also, could you go to the, yeah. So the retained portion also requires a rezoning because in the agricultural zone, the minimum lot area requirement is 40 hectares. When you remove the 3 acres for the severed lots, and then we'll remove an area that is currently zoned natural core and natural linkage, the lot area of the retained lot is a little bit less than 40 hectares. So with the rezoning, the retained lot will have a minimum lot area requirement of 35 hectares or about 86.5 acres. There is an area in the middle, and I'm sorry that the map is a little bit small, but in the middle of the property, there's an existing wetland and watercourse. Those areas are currently designated and zoned natural core and natural linkage to reflect the fact that there are natural environmental features there. This zoning bylaw amendment will not change the limits of that zone. So those areas will continue to be zoned natural core and natural linkage. As per the requirements of the Planning Act, notice of this application was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters of the land subject to the amendment. The application was also circulated to the required ministries and agencies, and a sign was posted on site. So we believe that the notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. To date, the township has received comments from Enbridge Gas and Hiawatha First Nation that they have no objections to the application. Subsequent to the planning report before you today, we did receive comments from the Autonomy Conservation, and they have indicated in a letter to the township that it's the opinion of Autonomy Conservation that the application conforms to section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement. Secondly, that a permit from Orca is not required. And thirdly, that they have determined that the subject property is not located within an area that is subject to the policies contained in the source protection plan. This application has been evaluated in terms of conformance with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, Peterborough County official plan, and the township's official plan, and staff have deemed that the application conforms to those documents. So the recommendation to council today is that you receive and consider all comments related to the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-04-23. And secondly, that following the public meeting, bylaw number 2023-61, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended, otherwise known as the Township of Cavan Monaghan zoning bylaw, be presented to council for approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Ms. Ellis, the rezoning this to agricultural exemption A20. Does that rezoning count within that lot, even though those areas within the lot aren't contiguous?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Deputy Mayor Huntley and members of council. The minimum lot area requirement applies to the area within the zone boundary. So even though they're not contiguous, it applies to everything that is within that zone boundary.
Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, my concern would be the entranceways. There's a fairly steep bank for the 2 lots that are going to the north off the County Road 10. And my big concern is right now, because they started just today, is the reconstruction of County Road 10 through Mount Pleasant, heading up to the edge of Bland Line. Are they aware of these 3 potential lots so that anything that's done in the reconstruction fits with the entranceways that Mr. Jameson would like to put in?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and members of council. Peterborough County Public Works is aware of the applications through the consent or the severance process. All agencies who have an interest in the application get circulated notice of the application and provide comments. So through the severance or the consent process, Peterborough County Public Works actually asks for road widenings from both of those lots. So a dedication of a road widening has been secured through the severance process, and entrance permits will be required from Peterborough County prior to their installation on site.
Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, yeah, I'm just worried because I don't know exactly what the plan is, but there was talk of curbing and whatever going in there. So whatever's being laid down that way, that they're fully aware of it. So it's not sending people out to do work that could have been done once the first time.
Understood. Other questions before we open the public meeting for comments from the members of the public? Seeing none, we will now open the portion of the public meeting to members of the public wishing to speak to the application before us. I will leave it open once, going twice. Seeing none, we will now move to consideration of the report before us. So there are two recommendations in the report, as Ms. Ellis mentioned, they are before us in there. One being that council receive and consider all comments related to the zoning bylaw amendment application, and that the following that the public meeting, that the bylaw number 2023-61 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended, otherwise known as the Township of Catamonican zoning bylaw, be presented to council for approval. Look to a mover and a seconder. If there's any questions about those recommendations, moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. I now need a resolution to close the public meeting. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. We will now move on to presentations, and we have a number of members of staff that we are happy to recognize for their long tenure and many years of service. So below, I have a list of employees that I want to call out by name. Not all of them are here with us today. Some might be online viewing, but we want to thank them for their hard work and dedication to the township. Miss Ellis, who is with us today, celebrating 20 years with the township. Thank you, Miss Ellis, for all your hard work. Joshua Nichols, Parks and Facilities Operator, who's also receiving 20 years of service as of this week. Ms. Pope, who I believe is joining us via online, Director of Finance and Treasury, who's been with the township for 15 years. Matthew Sargent is the working foreman and has been celebrating 10 years with us. And Edie Vandenberg, Fire Prevention Officer, has also been with the township for 10 years. So I have signed with the clerk a number of commemorative notifications, but we just want to take a time out in the public meeting to thank everyone for their commitment and dedication to serving the township of Catamonican. We very much appreciate thank you. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for that. We will now look for a mover. Do we need a mover and a seconder for that? No, we can just simply move on. So we have one set of minutes before us, the minutes of the regular meeting held September 5th. And we are just moving that the minutes of the regular meeting be approved as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. We'll now move on to the reports portion of our meeting. And the first report is Finance 2023-09, actual to budget. Ms. Pope joining us. Ms. Pope, congratulations on your anniversary with us, and we're happy to have you even in digital form today.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to work for Catamonican, especially with our team and under the leadership of the CAO. I don't think you
Can't
have
hear you, Ms.
long-term.
Pope, but hang with
Oh.
us. We'll get to you shortly, I'm sure. You want to try again, Ms. Pope? I think I just heard you.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
No.
Are you able to hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Check 1, 2.
Just bear with us, Kimberly. We're still not hearing you, so I'm just going to hold all that information and we're just going to revel in your anniversary a little longer.
Check 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Check
We're
1, 2.
coming now. I think, Ms. Pope, if you keep speaking just briefly,
Test
we'll.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, you're a little faint, so if we can just ask you to maybe speak up as best you can, I think.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to make one more volume adjustment here, just 1 minute.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
That's it.
Testing.
Thank you, Carly, and our IT department for fixing that. And over to you, Ms. Pope.
Thank you very much. I was just saying thank you very much. I think working for the municipality for long-term tenures, as you have many staff members being honored today, it's a tribute to the leadership of our council, our CAO, and all of us that work together hard at the municipality. So thank you for that on behalf of all of us. I have before council today the actual budget January to June. This is the first report that you're seeing under the new Diamond software. We have uploaded 10 years of the general ledger between the two softwares. As you know, this is an 18-month to 24-month deployment. So I apologize today that you don't have full access to all the details as of yet, because 2023 is still coming on board. But I thought what we do is bring forward this report. We have a few postings such as telecommunications, hydro, gas, and remittances that are not quite posted yet in the new software from May or June. And because this does go till June, that would make this incomplete at this time. So this is rather a first look picture, just to let you know that we're getting there. By Q3, we'll have all the details for you together. And I thought what I would do is just slow down a moment and go through a couple of the detailed reports to give you an understanding of how that looks. Thank you for moving forward. So this is our summary page as requested by council in the past, just giving you a generalized look at how we're doing, what budget funds are remaining for the fiscal year. But again, there are some expenditures that are not reflected in this report as of yet. So the details aren't as clear as what they could have been if it was all available today. So this is the summary page. If we could go to the attachment, that's perfect. Thank you. I'm following along on another screen so that I can see that. If we could, we're right on economic development administration. So what we've done in the new reporting is we've provided, if we could stay on page 1, that's perfect. Thank you. We've decided, we've tried to upgrade the reports so that they show more information, or at least they are clear to the general public, while at the same time staying in a format that's similar. So if someone wanted to compare 2010 to 2023, they can pull budget reports, they can pull actual budget reports, but we're going with a clearer format, but not completely different. So if we could just speak to the first department here, which is Economic Development Administration, you'll see that there is a header. There's a revenue section. Now in this particular department area, there isn't revenue in that line item. If you go down, then there's an expense section. It does total both revenue and expense. You can see that there. And then it totals that mini department within the Planning and Economic Development Department. If we move down to the next one, just as an example, again, you have a header, Planning Administration. It shows all the revenues, which are totaled below. Then you have expense. We happen to have to go to the next page on this one, just to see the total at the bottom. It continues down. And then you have a total for your expense and a total for your planning administration. A couple of key points to show you here, that the actual period to date, so the period would be that month in which we're running it for. This report goes up to June 30th. So the period itself would be June. The actual year to date would be everything from January to June. The approved budget is for the complete full year. The budget remaining is what is left of the budget that has not been spent as of yet, and then also provided to you in a percentage format. You'll notice at the top of every page on the left-hand side, it shows the date that the report was run. So I know sometimes when reports are run one after another, or perhaps council might ask for another one, they have that record at home. It'll at least let you know what is the most current report because we have the date and the time specified. And on the right-hand side, you'll notice at the top, there's page numbering. So in the Planning and Economic Development Department, there are 3 pages in total for their department. And then as we go down, you'll notice that the department switches to another department. So perhaps we could do that. Thank you. So I'm just passing here myself. After 3 of 3, then you'll see 1 of 5. And now we've moved into, you see the header has changed now to building and bylaws. And same format for each department to keep it clean. If we could just go back up to page 3 though. At the end of every department, there is an additional summary that's provided. So it takes all the different mini departments that we can call them inside, then again gives them to you in summary format here with the revenues, less the expenditures, the amount remaining against the budget, and then overall. If we can go down, page down again, looking at the building department there, we follow through with the same format. These are all the operating reports that we're bringing forward to council. The nice feature in the new Diamond software is we are going to be able to provide you, once the capital budget is established each year by council, there will be similar reports like this. The first year we'll be able to test the council capital reports to council, will be after we've set the 2024 budget. So I just thought I'd give a bit of an overview, make sure that you understood that this isn't a complete Q2 report, but because you're normally receiving this in August and at the very latest, the 1st of September, we didn't want to delay it any further. The next one will be after the Q3, so that ends September 30th. Then we have to wait about 2 weeks for all the data to come in and post it. So probably the first meeting in November that you'll see Q3. So therefore I have before council the actual to budget Q2, first one from Diamond. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here for you today.
Thank you for that, Ms. Pope. Nice to see that the investments in the technology are starting to be rolled out here. And obviously it's great for transparency and following along in year-over-year comparators as well. Questions, members of council, with regards to the report? I have one question. Mr. Hancock, would you like to speak to the fact that the sun is finally shining in the township? Any comments with regards to the solar revenue? I know you've been years in the darkness and finally the light is dawned, so I didn't know if you had a comment, sir.
Through Mr. Mayor to council, I think the solar units are probably finally doing their job and they're facing in the right directions. With that, we're in the black as we speak.
Thank you. Happy to hear it. With that, we're just receiving this report for information. Thank you, Ms. Pope, and thank you for joining us remotely. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, everyone. We're moving on to our second report. It's the Public Works 2023-20 recommended updates to the traffic and parking bylaw number 2025. Mr. Hancock, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, before you we have Public Works Report 2023-20 with recommended updates to the traffic and parking bylaw number 2022-65. The recommendations before you are as follows. Number one, that council approve the speed limit reduction request on Wilson line, reducing the speed limit from 80 to 60 between 1100 meters west of County Road 10 to the westerly limit. Recommendation number two is that council receive the speed limit reduction request for Larmer between County Road 28 and County Road 10 and Cedar Valley Road between County Road 28 and Hutchison Drive as information, and council will continue to monitor the traffic data in these locations. So no change recommended. And number three, the council approved the updated traffic bylaw number 2023-62, being a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking within the limits of the Township of Gavin-Monaghan, and repeal the previous traffic and parking bylaw number 2022-65 in its entirety. And just as a couple of comments for council, number one, it was previously a council's direction that we report annually on requests. So we are doing that in September each year. We do try to take all requests, whether it be one person or a number of people, such as a petition. In this case, it has been one individual on each of the roadways, so we did take that into account. Number two, the traffic review, which is done by our speed radar board, the traffic results are in the report. And we did reach out to the police to see if there's any occurrences that might alter our recommendations. On Wilson Road, we recognize it was sort of a strange situation because you had 60 at the first part of the roadway, and then you get into the residential built-up area and it was in the bylaw at 80. There appears to be some signage that's probably extended toward where the houses are. So I'm not sure they had the 1100 meter marked out correctly, but we are recommending that we just extend the 60 in that area. The last comment I would made, which the mayor may want to comment, is we did receive recently a request on Hayes Line to consider reducing the speed limit on Hayes Line. This was forwarded to us by the city of Kawartha Lakes. It came during the period that we were preparing this report, so we have not had a chance to pull the results of our setups on those roadways or review with the staff of Kawartha Lakes. So that is an ongoing matter and would require a separate report. At this point, we're only recommending one change, and that is on Wilson at the end. The rest will remain at the same limit as per the recommendation to council.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Yeah, as Mr. Hancock mentioned, I think that Councilor Byrne was copied in on that emails as well with regards to the ongoing conversation with City of Court Lake. So Hayes line being a boundary road, depending on the side you're on, requires both municipalities to work in lockstep in order for it to be remotely sensible in order to make some adjustments. It sounds as though, I know in the conversations Wayne had with their staff, and the conversation I had with the deputy mayor of City Court Lakes, I think there's a lot of interest and there's been a number of recent incidents. So because of the ongoing effort, and I believe staff's already proactively started some of the evaluation of that, I thought, because this is only a once an annual report, I think it would behoove us to defer the report to October for consideration, just so we can incorporate that Hayes line rather than having Hayes line rather than having City of Court Lakes wanting to move forward at one time and us not being able to reconsider that until September. There's only one other change incorporated in the report that's being proposed at this time, but you know, if there are other things that council might want to raise to Mr. Hancock's opinion, I mean, those could be evaluated as well. But I think that at this point, that's where I'm going to make that motion if council's a route, but I want people to have the opportunity to speak to anything else in the report. I just wanted to give you notice, sort of, that was the justification for the deferral rather than creating a new report altogether and having to amend the existing report before us today. I think deferral is the easiest way, and it's coming back within probably a month, if not the first week of or the first meeting in October, probably the second. But other questions with regards to the report, we can get to that motion later. There are any. Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, so Wilson line running west off the County Road 10 has already had signage put up last year for 60 kilometers per hour. Cedar Valley Road has 50 kilometer signage at either end, both at Highway 28 and at the quarter line. But what I'd like to address, or at least make known, these concession roads are main arterial roads to move traffic efficiently through the township. I look at some of what I consider bad decisions that impact people moving forward. One case is coming off Hayes line, heading south into Mount Pleasant. You're forced to ride the brakes all the way to the bottom of that big hill just to use the fuel to get up the next little hill. And if you turned around and went the other way, you're restricted from using gravity to build up speed to get up that large hill. Instead, you're forced to crawl up it and then expect it to get up to speed about 3/4 the way up. That half-mile stretch of road has 0 entrances on or off of it. Another classic example is if you drive into Lily Lake Road in Peterborough and you travel west from the Braley trying to head into Peterborough, because of one tragic event years ago, self-inflicted by somebody somewhat impaired, people moving forward are punished for the rest of the time unless we fix it. Another classic one is on the Stewart line. If you're heading east and trying to get to the County Road 10, good luck getting up that hill in the wintertime if there's a skiff of snow, trying to stay within the speed limit. I'd like to look at these things in a little better light rather than a knee-jerk reaction. And my emphasis has always been for years that we need to brush back the road allowances, raise the level of line of sight visibility, and get the safety factor up that way, rather than just worrying about, these aren't little back streets in some big city. They're main roads that move flow of traffic. So I'd like that to be a part of the consideration, please.
Any comment, Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Mayor, I think first of all, a couple of roads that were through you to Councillor Byrne, a couple of roads are county roads and not really within our jurisdiction. So that's, I believe one was County Road 10 and the other was Lily Lake Road. I believe Stewart is certainly under our jurisdiction. It was reported on and bylaw was approved last year. So unless you want us to revisit that, we would only deal with the ones that we have before us. So that would have to be council's direction.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, all of the decisions, well, at least the decisions made of late are based on, you know, when they're identified by members of the citizenry for us to investigate, we investigate them and we work with whether they're partners or other municipalities or the police themselves, we work with and gather as much information as possible to inform the decisions, whether it's changes in MTO information or anything to that extent. And that's really the rationale behind it, rather than just simply saying one person's requested it, now it's going to be this. So that's sort of the process that we're going here. And we're really trying to make decisions with regards to what's before us, rather than reevaluating the decisions that have been done in a given year. Councillor Edgerton, do you have a comment?
To you, Mr. Chair, to Hancock, I lived in the township all my life, and we grew up driving at 50 mile an hour on the roads. I see that we're dropping the speed limit down, so it stops the service trucks and everybody from getting to us faster, slow it down. No matter how slow we make the signs, the idiots that want to drive way over the speed limit are driving over it. It doesn't matter what the signs are. So I think reducing down the speed limit just hinders people who want to drive common sense on them. So I think we have to get more enforcement out checking them, and the police sitting in one spot for half an hour. After 5 minutes, the headlights are flashing, so he might just well leave then anyways and do it some patrolling and see if they can catch them that way, because the road I live on is 70 clicks, and I'll tell you, there's some of them reading in the 70s pretty high on that. So I think dropping speed limits doesn't really solve our problem. Thank you.
Yep, and in that conversation or in that comment, I mean, like I said, this is with regards to what we can control. We can control the speed limit signs that are on the roads that we have jurisdiction over. And what we do is by comment, by request, we investigate them. And if they don't, but there's been many reports that, or many instances where this report has come before council and all of the recommendations that have been sought by members of the public have not been supported. So that's the process that we go through. We evaluate certain things. So if there are potentially streets that maybe council wants to be investigated, that can be done over the course of the year and then reflected in next year's study as well. So we can have those comments with Mr. Hancock. But is there any issues with regards to the deferral of the report? Because this report will be coming back again based on that. Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, just to the point you just made, as part of my fact finding, I was able to go out at night and drive away from the detectors. You got a fancy name for them, but Metro count. But anyways, I was able to notice in my rear view mirror that they would flash that I was traveling at a high rate of speed away from them, even though I wasn't approaching them. So I sometimes wonder about the validity of some of this stuff. I'm not saying it's not a useful tool. I just don't know if it's as accurate as some people like to think it is.
Yeah, I think with regards to the comments and the reports that we do get, I mean, all of the data is collected of every reading that's taken. So there's not necessarily, there are often outliers that we've often addressed with the police about identifying certain areas, even certain times when individuals are traveling at higher rates of speed. And they use that for the enforcement standpoint. It's a bit less pertinent for the conversation about the actual speed limits themselves. And we take more of that direction from the police when we share the results or share the regards to the reports that we're doing with them. But point taken. And like I said, with regards to the motion, I'm hoping that we can defer this report for the Hazeline component. And if there are other things that council or members of the public want considered, they can be added to that consideration for the 2024 report. So we have a mover, I believe, Deputy Mayor Huntley. Is there a seconder to refer that report? Councillor Natchoff. So just for clarification, the council defer the report Public Works 2023-20 until an October council meeting to attempt to include the consideration of Hazeline in cooperation with the city of Forth Lakes. That's the motion. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks for considering that, members of council. We now have the CAO report, capital status, Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the report is before you. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions, members of council? If not, I would like to make a motion just to add something to Ms. Hurley's already copious amounts of tasks. There's been a lot of discussion with regards to a couple different properties and been a lot of rumors, but I'd like to sort of, if council will support me, I'd like to move that council direct the CAO to reach out to the owners of both Browns Line and Kawartha Downs to provide council an update on the progress of the developments of these two MZO properties. It's been a long time since we've heard of anything, and there's lots of rumor out there, but I'd like council to be updated by the actual individuals involved because I'd like a more current information or direct compliment or answer as to what's going on. So That is a motion that I'll make before council. Is there a seconder? Councillor Natchoff, any questions about the motion? All in favor? That motion is carried, so we can add that to your portfolio of responsibilities. Now that that's done, if there's no questions about the CAO's report, we'll need a motion to receive that as well. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. Council and committee verbal reports. I think we're just starting to pick back up with the committees. Any committee reports that anyone has today? Councillor Natchoff?
Chair, through you, I attended our first Centennial Place Community Services Board meeting. So myself, Karen Graham, Karen Morton, and 3 staff members from Centennial Place met this week at Centennial Place. A previous meeting was not until 2019. So there was quite a bit of kind of catching up, introductions of new staff members from Centennial Place. And then, so we kind of gave a little brief history of who we are, what our plans and hopes were to do as far as the committee moving forward. So once we kind of have more information and establish kind of a strategic plan, for lack of a better term, I'll have more to report during our next meeting, and that will be scheduled for January sometime with the intention of meeting twice yearly. Thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, I just want to make everybody aware of the Millbrook Fall Festival this weekend, downtown Millbrook. Come one, come all, 11 to 5. Lots of fun activities for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Huntley. Hopefully the weather holds and everything's beautiful as it should be this fall. 2 points, myself and a number of members of council attended a few different events on Sunday. One being at the Legion, which was a great event, and you'll notice that the downtown will be decorated with commemorative banners recognizing some of the contributions of our veterans. Really great ceremony. I want to thank MPP Scott and MP Schmale for joining. Really looking forward to being these up in the community. At Legion Week, I believe, starts this week, so they're planning on getting them up sooner than later, and they'll be up throughout the village. And there's lots of information more. This is about 15 in the initial phase, but if families have members of the community that were service members, they're happy to reach out to the Legion, and Miss Korf and her team will get you in touch if you're interested in having someone recognized throughout the village. But we'd really like to see as many of the light posts decorated with the remembrance banners as we can. So we'll start with the 15 and they'll be up sooner than later. And I want to thank members of the Legion, members of staff, Chris Allison and Bridget Iott, and also members of the BIA for working on that project collectively. It was a great kickoff. The banners look awesome, and it's obviously a very important remembrance component to this community. And the second was myself, Councillor Byrne and Councillor Edgerton were able to attend the firefighter 2023 graduating class of the recruit course on Sunday as well. And so I want to congratulate Rachel Ellis, Richard Haynes, Jaden Reynolds, Andrew De La Rosa, and Daniel Schultheis for graduating and joining the CM complement. I know Chief Belfour isn't here today, but I know he's very happy with the recruit class coming in. So we want to recognize those individuals as well. Can I get a mover and a seconder for those committee reports? Councillor Byrne, sorry, just before we do that.
Through you, Chair, just on that note, there was a deadline when I looked at the application forms to get other families to have their family members possibly recognized of June 1st of next year, just because of the way the banner program's set up. So if anybody's at all interested, and it spikes because of their presence at the memorial down at Remembrance Day, that there is a slight deadline that needs to be addressed.
Great point, Councillor Byrne. Thank you for that. Now, with that, we'll take a mover and a seconder for the verbal committee reports. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Thanks everyone for that. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information, and there is no correspondence for action. We are now at the bylaws. Bylaw number 2023-61 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-58. As amended, otherwise known as the Township of Cabanmonaghan zoning bylaw. Jameson be read a first, second, and third time and passed this 18th day of September, signed by the mayor clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. Oh, it's already captured.
Yep.
That is our only bylaw, so I'm saved from my normal rants of that. So thank you for that. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, the confirming bylaw number 2023-63 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held September 18th, read a first, second, third time and passed this 18th day of September, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor. That is approved. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor. That is approved. There are a number of upcoming events and meetings. As Deputy Mayor Huntley already mentioned, there is the Fall Festival coming up this weekend. Other notes, there is the Cabin Monaghan Public Library Board meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Millbrook Branch. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meets Thursday, September 21st at 9 a.m. Millwood Valley Trails Advisory Committee meets Monday, September 25th at 4 p.m. Our next regular council meeting is Monday, October 2nd at 1 p.m. here in the chamber. And the council meeting after that is on October 16th on 1 p.m. also in the chamber.